They thought humanity would beg for mercy. They thought we'd surrender our worlds without a fight. They were dead wrong. The Confederation Senate chamber floated in the void between stars, a diplomatic station where 500 species gathered to decide the fate of galaxies. Today, that chamber was silent as a tomb. Every ambassador, every counselor, every witness present watched the holographic display with the same expression of barely contained horror. The invasion fleet surrounding Earth numbered in the tens of thousands. The Crithian Dominion had brought enough firepower to glass 100 worlds. Ambassador Thelric of the Crithian Dominion stood at the center podium, his chitinous armor gleaming under the station's ambient light, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of magnanimous victory. "The human infestation will be cleansed," he announced, his voice reverberating through the translation matrix. "Their stubborn refusal to surrender their primary world leaves us no choice. Earth will serve as an example to all who defy the Dominion's rightful expansion." In the human gallery, Ambassador Sarah Chen sat perfectly still. Her fingers didn't tremble. Her expression remained neutral. Around her, the other ambassadors whispered among themselves in dozens of languages, their translation implants creating a susurrus of pitying commentary. The Volroxy ambassador actually reached over to pat her shoulder. His luminescent tentacle meant to convey sympathy. Sarah didn't acknowledge it. "The humans have 48 standard hours to evacuate their government," Thelric continued. "After that, the bombardment begins. We estimate complete planetary sterilization will take approximately 72 hours. It is unfortunate, but necessary." The Confederation Chancellor, an ancient being whose species had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations for millennia, inclined his crystalline head. "Ambassador Chen, does humanity wish to make a final statement before this body?" Sarah stood. She smoothed her suit jacket, a dark navy that seemed to absorb the light around her. When she walked to the respondents' podium, her heels clicked against the floor with mechanical precision. 500 species watched her, most with pity, some with calculated indifference, a few with barely concealed satisfaction at seeing the upstart humans finally put in their place. "Honorable Chancellor, esteemed members of the Confederation," Sarah began, her voice steady and clear. "Humanity thanks you for your concern during these proceedings. We appreciate the Volroxy offer of refugee assistance. We are grateful for the Thornian diplomatic intervention attempts. We acknowledge the Confederation's limited authority in what has been classified as a bilateral territorial dispute." Thelric's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. The human was capitulating. Finally, after months of stubborn resistance, they understood their place in the galactic order. However, Sarah continued, and something in her tone made several ambassadors sit up straighter. "Humanity must decline these generous offers. We will not be evacuating Earth. We will not be surrendering our home world, and we will not be requiring any assistance from the Confederation in resolving this matter." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Thelric's forearms snapped together in a gesture of aggressive disbelief. "You cannot be serious. Have you seen the fleet surrounding your world? 50,000 warships, enough firepower to crack your planet's crust. Your people possess perhaps a few hundred defensive platforms, some orbital stations, and a handful of system patrol craft. Your bravado is admirable, but this is not courage. It is suicide." Sarah smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "You're correct on several points, Ambassador Thelric. Your fleet is indeed impressive. Your firepower calculations are accurate. And yes, our visible defensive capabilities appear grossly insufficient." She paused, letting the word visible hang in the air. "Tell me, Ambassador, how much do you know about human history?" Thelric's mandibles spread in confusion. "What does your primitive history have to do with everything?" Sarah interrupted, her voice sharp enough to cut steel. "Because if you knew anything about humanity, you'd know we've been preparing for this moment since we first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. You'd know that every invasion fleet in human history has learned the same lesson. From the Persians at Thermopylae to the Nazis over Britain, from the Mongols at Ain Jalut to the British at New Orleans, humanity doesn't respond well to bullies. We don't bend. We don't break." Her smile widened. "We shatter you." The holographic display in the center of the chamber suddenly flickered. The feed from the Sol system wavered, then refocused. The massive Krithian fleet still surrounded Earth in a perfect blockade formation, their ships arranged in concentric spheres of overwhelming force. Nothing had changed. Your theatrics are wasted, Ambassador Chen, Thelric said dismissively. Empty words will not, then space folded. It wasn't like the standard FTL transitions the Confederation species used. Those created ripples, distortions, the gradual emergence of ships from higher dimensional space. This was different. This was violent. Reality itself seemed to tear open in 1,000 places simultaneously. And through those tears came humanity's answer to the Krithian Dominion. The censor officer aboard the Krithian flagship, the Dominion's fist, barely had time to scream a warning before the tactical display went completely white. Contact. Multiple contacts. Unknown signatures appearing in proximity to fleet positions. Numbers. Numbers impossible. Sensor error. Must be sensor error. Fleet Commander Zarvik grabbed the edge of his command throne as the ship's inertial dampeners struggled to compensate for the sudden gravitational shear. What is happening? Report. Sir, ships are appearing inside our formation. Massive dreadnought-class vessels. Smaller craft numbering in the... By the ancestors, readings show over 100,000 human warships. They're everywhere. The Dominion's fist shuddered as something the size of a small moon materialized. Less than 50 kilometers off the port bow, the human dreadnought was a nightmare of angles and armored plates, its hull studded with weapon emplacements that numbered in the thousands. Along its flanks, enormous letters spelled out its designation in human script, USFS Indomitable. But it wasn't alone. Around it, above it, below it in the three-dimensional battlefield, ships appeared like stars winking into existence. Carriers the size of cities. Battleships bristling with railgun arrays. Destroyers moving in wolf packs of hundreds. Frigates, corvettes, gunboats, and craft of designations the Krithian censors couldn't even classify. And behind them all, eclipsing Earth itself, a structure so massive it defied comprehension. A battle station that made the Confederation's largest engineering projects look like children's toys. In the Senate chamber, every ambassador was on their feet. The holographic display showed the battlefield in real time, and the sheer scale of what they were witnessing defied belief. The Krithian fleet, which moments before had seemed an unstoppable armada, now looked like a collection of toys floating in an ocean of human warships. Impossible. Thelric whispered, his aggressive posture collapsing. Where did they? When did they? We had intelligence reports. We surveyed human industrial capacity. They can't possibly have built. Sarah's laugh was cold and sharp. Oh, Ambassador, we didn't build this fleet in response to your invasion. We've been building it for 200 years, since the moment we achieved FTL travel and realized we weren't alone in the universe. Since the moment we understood that the galaxy was full of species like yours, species who would see us as prey, as resources to be exploited, as inferiors to be conquered. She gestured to the holographic display, where the human fleet had now completely surrounded the Krithian armada. The roles had reversed in less than 60 seconds. The hunters had become the hunted. We built this fleet in secret. Every asteroid mining operation in the outer Sol system was cover for shipyard construction. Every trade convoy that left human space carried back materials and technology we reverse-engineered and improved. Every diplomatic meeting where you species smiled and patronized us, we were learning, watching, planning. The display showed the human battle station powering up. Energy readings spiked across every sensor in the system. It wasn't charging weapons. It was broadcasting, a tight beam transmission directed at the Krithian flagship. Fleet Commander Zarvik's communication system crackled to life. The face that appeared on his screen was human, but unlike the soft diplomats he'd seen before. This human wore military insignia and an expression carved from granite. Her hair was steel gray, her eyes the color of deep space, and her uniform bore enough medals and decorations to indicate she'd seen more combat than most Krithian warriors experienced in 3 lifetimes. Krithian Fleet Commander, the human said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. I am Fleet Admiral Elizabeth Zhao, Supreme Commander of the United Systems Defense Fleet. You are hereby ordered to power down your weapons, lower your shields, and prepare to receive boarding parties for the formal acceptance of your surrender. You have 60 seconds to comply." Zarvik's mandibles worked soundlessly for a moment. Then rage overtook shock. "Surrender. You dare demand our surrender? We still outnumber your visible forces. We have 50,000 warships. You have 50,000 targets," Admiral Zhao interrupted. "And if you're counting ships, Commander, you might want to have your sensors sweep the outer system. The fleet you see round Earth is just our rapid response force. Our main battle fleet is currently moving in from the Kuiper Belt. That would be another 300,000 ships. Give or take a few carrier groups." On the tactical display, new contacts began appearing at the edge of sensor range. So many contacts that the display couldn't render them all individually, instead showing massive clouds of hostile signatures accelerating in system. The Krithian sensors, designed to track fleet-scale engagements, simply labeled the approaching force as mass contact enemy fleet numerical superiority. "Overwhelming." 45 seconds, Admiral Zhao said calmly. In the Senate chamber, Ambassador Thelric had gone completely still, his posture rigid with shock. Around him, the other ambassadors were erupting in chaos. The Volroxy delegation was frantically running calculations. The Thornian military observers were recording every detail with their multi-spectrum visual sensors. The Confederation Chancellor himself had risen from his seat for the first time in living memory, his ancient crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated profound disturbance. Sarah Chen remained at the podium, watching the display with the same neutral expression she'd maintained throughout the proceedings. "I tried to tell you, Ambassador Thelric, you should have studied human history. We have a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. You mistook our soft speech for weakness. You assumed our diplomacy meant we were incapable of violence." She turned to look directly at the Krithian ambassador. "You were wrong." On the tactical display, the timer continued counting down. The Krithian fleet remained frozen in formation, their weapons powered up but not firing. Fleet Commander Zarvik was receiving frantic communications from his ship captains, all asking the same questions. "What do we do? Do we fight? Can we even fight this?" 30 seconds, Admiral Zhao's voice cut through the chaos. "I should mention, Commander, that every ship in your fleet currently has between 50 and 200 human warheads targeted on it. Kinetic kill vehicles, plasma warheads, antimatter torpedoes, and a few exotic packages I'm not authorized to discuss over open channels. If you're feeling suicidal, by all means, open fire. You might even destroy a few of our ships before we glass your entire fleet. But I guarantee you this, not one of your vessels will survive the next 5 minutes. If you choose violence." Zarvik looked at his tactical officer. The young Krithian was holding his station with visible effort, his carapace actually cracking under stress. "Sir, targeting solutions show they're not bluffing. Every ship in the fleet has multiple locks. Some ships have hundreds. They can execute our entire force in less than 2 minutes if they fire simultaneously." 20 seconds, Admiral Zhao said. "What about retreat?" Zarvik demanded. "Can we jump to FTL?" "Negative, sir. The humans have activated some kind of inhibitor field. It's massive, covering the entire inner system. FTL drives are non-functional. We're trapped." Zarvik's mind raced through options, scenarios, desperate strategies. His career had been built on aggressive action, on overwhelming force, on the certainty that the Krithian Dominion's military might was unquestionable. In 60 seconds, that certainty had been shattered more completely than any weapon could achieve. 10 seconds, Admiral Zhao said. "Choose wisely, Commander. Choose life." In the Senate chamber, every being present held their collective breath. The holographic display showed two fleets frozen in a tableau of potential annihilation. 50,000 Krithian ships, the pride of the Dominion. 500,000 human ships, appearing from nowhere like vengeful ghosts. 5 seconds. Zarvik closed his primary eyes. He thought of his crew, thousands of Krithians who had followed him into what was supposed to be a simple punitive expedition against a weak species. He thought of his home world, of his clan, of the shame and dishonor that would follow this decision. But mostly, he thought about those human ships, every weapon locked and ready, and the cold certainty in Admiral Zhao's voice. All ships, He transmitted on the fleet-wide channel. Power down weapons. Lower shields. Stand down from combat alert. We surrender. The Senate chamber erupted. Ambassadors were shouting, demanding explanations, calling for emergency sessions. The Crithian delegation was in complete disarray, with junior ambassadors frantically trying to contact their homeworld, while senior diplomats stood in stunned silence. The Confederation Chancellor was attempting to restore order, his crystalline voice cutting through the chaos with limited success. Sarah Chen simply stood at the podium, watching the display as the Crithian fleet powered down. One by one, 50,000 warships went dark, their shields flickering out of existence, their weapons falling silent. The human fleet maintained their positions, unmoving, weapons still locked. A clear message that the surrender would be accepted, but verified. Acknowledged but never trusted. Wise choice. Commander Zarvik, Admiral Zhao said, and for the first time, there was something almost resembling approval in her voice. Boarding parties will arrive within the hour. You and your officers will be treated according to Confederation conventions on military prisoners. Your crews will be repatriated once diplomatic protocols are established. Your ships will be impounded pending negotiations between the Dominion and the United Systems. She paused, then leaned forward slightly, her expression hardening. And Commander, tell your government that humanity is done being patient. We're done with threats. We're done with species treating us like we're primitives playing at civilization. The next time someone decides to invade human space, the next time some empire decides we're weak enough to conquer, she smiled. And it was the smile of a predator. We won't bother with surrender demands. We'll just open fire. The transmission ended. The tactical display showed the human fleet beginning to move, smaller craft detaching from the main formations, to begin the process of securing the captured Crithian vessels, troop transports, boarding shuttles, and entire marine companies moving with practiced efficiency. In the Senate chamber, Sarah Chen finally moved from the podium. She walked back to her seat in the human gallery with measured steps, ignoring the stares, the shocked whispers, the frantic questions being thrown at her from a dozen different species. She sat down, smoothed her suit jacket once more, and folded her hands in her lap. The Volroxy ambassador who had offered sympathy earlier was staring at her, with his huge luminescent eyes. You lied to us. All of you. For decades, you pretended to be a minor species, barely capable of defending yourselves. You attended every military summit, every diplomatic conference, and you never mentioned you had a fleet that could rival the combined forces of half the Confederation. Sarah turned to look at him. Her expression was pleasant, professional, diplomatic. Ambassador Kelver, humanity never lied. We simply didn't share information that wasn't requested. You assumed we were weak because we preferred trade to conquest. You mistook our desire for peace as inability to wage war. Those were your errors, not our deceptions, but the military surveys, the intelligence reports. How did you hide something this massive? The same way you hide anything in plain sight, Sarah replied. You make it look like something else. Our shipyards looked like mining operations. Our military installations looked like research stations. Our fleet exercises in the outer system looked like industrial accidents or natural phenomena. We've spent centuries learning how your species think, how you gather intelligence, what you look for and what you ignore. And we used that knowledge to build something you never saw coming. The Thornian military observer, a species renowned for their tactical acumen, leaned over. His multiple vocal chambers created a harmonious but urgent tone. Ambassador Chen, that battle station, the one in high orbit around your moon. We're detecting energy signatures that shouldn't be possible with any known technology. What exactly is that installation? Sarah's smile grew slightly warmer. That's Fortress Liberty, our newest defensive platform. We finished construction about 8 months ago. It's primarily a deterrent system, though as you can see, it serves as an excellent fleet coordination center. As for its capabilities, she shrugged delicately. Well, I suppose the Confederation will learn all about it during the next military technology summit. Assuming, of course, that the Council formally recognizes humanity's application for Security Council membership. The implications of her statement rippled through the chamber like a shockwave. The Confederation Security Council was the most exclusive and powerful body in known space, limited to species that could credibly project force on a galactic scale. Humanity had been denied membership 3 times, dismissed as too young, too inexperienced, too weak to deserve a seat at that particular table. The Confederation Chancellor finally restored a semblance of order to the chamber. His crystalline form pulsed with light as he addressed Sarah directly. Ambassador Chen, the Confederation Council will require a full accounting of this revelation. The sudden appearance of a military force of this magnitude raises serious questions about the balance of power, about regional stability, about humanity's intentions in the broader galactic community. Of course, Chancellor, Sarah replied, standing once more. Humanity is happy to provide transparency regarding our defensive capabilities. We'll submit the required documentation, host inspection tours of our non-classified facilities, and participate in good faith in all discussions regarding our military capacity. She paused. However, I should clarify one thing for this body. What you witnessed today was not the full strength of the United Systems Defense Fleet. What you saw was approximately 60% of our ready response forces. This does not include our reserve fleets, our system defense forces, our special operations groups, or our strategic deterrent forces. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Ambassadors who had been whispering fell silent. Even Felric, who had been in a state of shock since the fleet appeared, raised his head to stare at Sarah with something approaching horror. 60%. The Chancellor asked carefully. Approximately, Sarah confirmed. We felt it was sufficient to address the current situation, without revealing the full extent of our capabilities. I hope you understand, Chancellor. Humanity has learned to be cautious about showing all our cards at once. She let that statement hang in the air for a moment, watching the dawning realization spread across the faces of 500 species representatives. They'd been wrong about humanity, catastrophically wrong, and now they were all recalculating their assumptions, their strategies, their entire relationship with the species they'd dismissed as insignificant. Now then, Sarah said, her tone becoming almost casual, I believe the next item on today's agenda was the trade dispute between the Volroxi and the Thornians regarding mining rights in the Kepler sector. Unless there are more pressing matters to discuss. No one spoke. The holographic display still showed the Sol system, where the human fleet was efficiently processing the surrender of 50,000 Krithian warships. The largest military defeat in modern Confederation history was playing out in real time, and the species responsible for it was calmly asking about trade disputes, as if nothing unusual had happened. The Confederation Chancellor looked at Sarah for a long moment, his crystalline eyes refracting her image 1,000 times. Finally, he inclined his head in a gesture that might have been respect or might have been wariness. I believe, Ambassador Chen, that the Council will need to reconvene after taking time to process today's developments. The session is adjourned until further notice. As the ambassadors began filing out of the chamber in a daze, Sarah remained seated. She pulled out a small communication device and activated it with a subtle gesture. The face that appeared on the screen was Admiral Zhao, now sitting in what appeared to be a command center with dozens of officers working at stations. Behind her, well done, Ambassador, Zhao said with a slight smile. The fleet performed exactly as expected. 0 casualties on our side. Complete surrender achieved in under 10 minutes. I'd call that a successful operation. The diplomatic fallout is going to be significant. Sarah replied quietly. We've just upended to centuries of galactic power dynamics. There will be consequences. Let them come, Zhao said firmly. Humanity is done apologizing for being strong. We're done making ourselves small so other species feel comfortable. If the Confederation wants to work with us as equals, we'll be the best allies they could ask for. If they want to treat us as threats, she shrugged, then we'll be the most dangerous threat they've ever faced. Sarah nodded slowly. I'll begin the diplomatic process of normalizing our military profile. It's going to take months, maybe years, to establish new protocols, new treaties, new understandings. You'll have whatever support you need from the fleet, Zhao assured her. We're not going anywhere. We'll maintain a presence in Sol system that makes our capabilities crystal clear. No more hiding. No more pretending to be weak. Humanity stands in the light now. The transmission ended. Sarah sat alone in the empty chamber for a few more minutes, watching the holographic display as the human fleet continued their operations. 50,000 enemy ships captured without firing a shot. The most powerful military demonstration in modern history, executed with such overwhelming force that resistance hadn't even been considered. But Sarah Chen, career diplomat and one of humanity's most experienced negotiators, knew that the real battle was just beginning. Military victory was clean, decisive, measurable. Diplomatic victory was messy, complicated, and never truly finished. The galaxy had just learned that humanity could fight. Now she had to teach them that humanity could also be trusted with that power. On the display, Earth continued its steady rotation, blue and green and beautiful, watched over by a fleet that could shatter worlds. Above it, Fortress Liberty pulsed with power. A declaration made manifest: humanity would not be conquered. Humanity would not be threatened. Humanity would not bow. And anyone foolish enough to forget that lesson would learn it the same way the Crithian Dominion just had, suddenly, violently, and without any chance for a second mistake, 72 hours after the Battle of Seoul. As it was already being called throughout Confederation space, the real work began. The Crithian prisoners had been processed and secured aboard human vessels. Their warships had been towed to designated holding orbits, where teams of human engineers were conducting detailed inspections of every system, every weapon, every piece of technology. Not to steal it, Admiral Zhao had made clear in her reports. To understand it, to know exactly what they'd defeated. In a secured conference room aboard Fortress Liberty, Sarah Chen stood before a holographic strategic map of the entire Confederation. Beside her, Admiral Zhao reviewed data streams from multiple sources. Around the conference table sat the real architects of humanity's long game. Director Marcus Webb of Strategic Intelligence, General Patricia Morrison of the Systems Marine Corps, Dr. Yuki Tanaka of Advanced Weapons Research, and Chancellor David Okonkwo, the civilian leader of the United Systems government. The Crithian Dominion has recalled their entire military to defensive positions around their core worlds, Director Webb reported, highlighting sections of the map in red. They're terrified we're going to launch a retaliatory strike. Their economy is already showing signs of stress. 3 of their client species have formally requested to renegotiate their protection agreements. Good, Chancellor Okonkwo said flatly. Let them be afraid. Let them all be afraid. Fear creates caution, and caution prevents wars. The problem, Sarah interjected, is that fear also creates desperation. The Thornian Collective has quietly mobilized their reserve fleets. The Volroxi are conducting emergency military exercises. Even some of our friendlier neighbors are suddenly investing heavily in defensive installations. They're not preparing to attack us. They're preparing in case they become the next target. Admiral Zhao nodded grimly. We've achieved our primary objective, demonstrating that humanity cannot be conquered through conventional military force. But we may have overcorrected. The galaxy isn't just respecting us. They're terrified of us. Then we need to show them they have nothing to fear from humanity. Chancellor Okonkwo stated, unless they threaten us. Sarah, what's the diplomatic situation? Sarah activated a different section of the holographic display, showing a complex web of connections between species and political blocs. Mixed, the Confederation Council has fast-tracked our Security Council application. That vote happens in 6 days, and our intelligence suggests will be approved unanimously. No one wants to be on record opposing us right now. That's good, isn't it? General Morrison asked. It would be if it were genuine respect rather than fear-driven compliance. Sarah replied, we need allies, General, not terrified neighbors. Right now, we have something more dangerous. We have a galaxy full of species trying to figure out if they should befriend us or build coalitions against us. Dr. Tanaka cleared his throat. There's another issue. Our demonstration at Seoul revealed capabilities that are going to trigger an arms race. We've already detected increased military spending across 17 major species. They're not going to attack us, but they're going to try to match us. The technological and industrial escalation alone could destabilize half the Confederation. Let them try, Admiral Zhao said coldly. It took us 2 centuries and the focused effort of an entire species to build what we built. They're fractured, competitive, and most of them have been sitting comfortable in their power structures. For so long they've forgotten how to truly innovate. Elizabeth, Chancellor Okonkwo said carefully, I know you've spent your entire career preparing for the worst-case scenario, and you were right to do so. What happened at Seoul proved that. But now we need to think beyond worst-case scenarios. We need to think about how humanity fits into the galactic community, not as a hidden threat, but as an active participant. With respect, Chancellor Zhao replied, her voice tense. The galaxy has spent 2 centuries treating us like children playing dress-up. They've patronized us, excluded us from meaningful decisions. And when we didn't submit to their hierarchies, they tried to destroy us. You want me to suddenly trust that they've learned their lesson from one demonstration? I want you to give them the chance to, Okonkwo said firmly. Because the alternative is humanity becomes exactly what they fear, an aggressive military power that imposes its will through overwhelming force. The room fell silent. It was the fundamental tension at the heart of humanity's emergence. How to be strong enough to never be threatened, but not so strong that they became the threat. The balance between showing teeth and showing mercy. Between being feared and being trusted. Sarah broke the silence. I have a proposal. It's going to be controversial, and it's going to require resources and commitment from every department represented at this table. We're listening, Chancellor Okonkwo said. We announced the Humanity Initiative, Sarah began, pulling up a document she'd been preparing during the long journey. From the Confederation Senate back to Seoul, a comprehensive program to share certain technologies, provide security assistance to threatened species, and demonstrate that our military capacity exists for defense, not conquest. Share our technology? Admiral Zhao's voice was sharp. The technology that took us 2 centuries to develop, the advantages that make our fleet superior to anything else in the galaxy. Selected technologies, Sarah clarified. Not our military hardware, not our strategic systems, but medical advances, agricultural improvements, industrial processes, the things that improve quality of life rather than military capability. We show the galaxy that humanity's strength isn't just about destroying enemies. It's about building a better future. Director Webb leaned forward. It's a good psychological operation. It reframes the narrative from humanity as threat to humanity as protector. But it's going to take more than sharing some farming techniques to change opinions. That's why the second part of the initiative involves security guarantees, Sarah continued. We identify species that are vulnerable to aggression from larger neighbors. We offer them protection under human military umbrella. Not occupation, not control, protection. We become the shield for those who can't defend themselves. That's going to put us in direct competition with the established power blocks. General Morrison observed. The Dominion, the Collective, the Federation of Outer Worlds, they all have their client species. If we start offering protection to vulnerable worlds, we're essentially challenging their spheres of influence. Exactly, Sarah said. We force them to compete with us on humanitarian grounds rather than military ones. If they want to maintain their influence, they'll have to treat their client species better. If they don't, those species will come to us. Either way, the galaxy becomes a better place. Chancellor Okonkwo was nodding slowly. It's ambitious. It's going to strain our resources. But it might work. Elizabeth, can the fleet support this kind of extended deployment? Admiral Zhao sat back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. It would require a significant restructuring of our operational posture. Instead of maintaining the fleet in concentrated formations, we'd need to distribute battle groups across multiple sectors. More vulnerable to coordinated attacks, but also more responsive to local threats. She paused. It could work, but only if we maintain absolute technical superiority. The moment another species develops weapons systems that can threaten our ships, this entire strategy collapses, which is why we don't stop innovating. Dr. Tanaka interjected. The fleet we revealed at Seoul represents our current generation of technology. But we've been working on next-generation systems that won't be deployment-ready for another decade. By the time anyone catches up to what they saw at Seoul, we'll have already moved 2 steps ahead. There's one more element to the initiative, Sarah said quietly. The most important one, and the most dangerous. We need to show the galaxy what we're really capable of. Not in combat, in cooperation. She pulled up an image of a distant star system, red and dying, surrounded by a handful of barely habitable worlds. This is the Calvari system, home to approximately 3 billion Calvari, a species that's been declining for the past century. Their sun is entering its red giant phase earlier than their scientists predicted. In approximately 20 years, their worlds will become uninhabitable. The Confederation has been debating what to do about this for 50 years. Relocation is too expensive. Terraforming other worlds would take too long. So they've essentially written the Calvari off as an acceptable loss. What are you proposing? Chancellor Okonkwo asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. We save them. Sarah said simply, we use our stellar engineering technology, the systems we develop for our own solar expansion projects, and we stabilize their sun. We give the Calvari another 10,000 years in their home system, and we do it publicly, with full Confederation observation, so everyone can see what humanity's technological advancement actually means. The silence that followed was profound. What Sarah was proposing was beyond ambitious. It was the kind of large-scale engineering project that most species considered impossible. Stellar manipulation was theoretical for most of the Confederation. For humanity to do it, openly and successfully, would fundamentally change how every species viewed human capabilities. The cost alone, Director Webb started, would be less than maintaining our fleet at full alert status for 5 years. Dr. Tanaka interrupted, and we've already done most of the theoretical work. We've been planning to implement stellar engineering in our own system within the next century. This would just accelerate our timeline and apply it elsewhere. The risks, Admiral Zhao said carefully, are substantial. If we fail, if something goes wrong, we don't just lose resources. We lose credibility. We look like arrogant children who overreached. And if we succeed? Chancellor Okonkwo asked. If we succeed, Sarah said, we prove that humanity's emergence isn't a threat to the galaxy. It's the best thing that's happened to the Confederation in 1,000 years. The vote was unanimous. The Humanity Initiative would move forward, with full backing from every major department of the United Systems government. But as the meeting adjourned and the various leaders returned to their duties, Sarah remained in the conference room with Admiral Zhao, looking at the holographic display of the Calvari system. You know, this is going to complicate everything, Zhao said quietly. Every commitment we make, every species we protect, every project we undertake, it's going to create dependencies, expectations. We won't just be the hidden fleet anymore. We'll be responsible for the safety and well-being of billions of beings across dozens of worlds. I know, Sarah replied, but that's what being a galactic power really means, Elizabeth. It's not about having the biggest guns or the most ships. It's about having the strength to use that power responsibly, to make the hard choices, to be what the galaxy needs, even when it's difficult. When did you become such an optimist? Zhao asked with a slight smile. I'm not an optimist, Sarah said. I'm a realist. And the reality is that humanity can't exist in isolation. We're part of the galactic community now, whether we like it or not. We can be the terrifying force that everyone fears, or we can be the reliable power that everyone turns to when things go wrong. I know which version of humanity I want to represent. Admiral Zhao nodded slowly. Then I suppose I'd better start figuring out how to deploy battle groups across 1,000 star systems while still maintaining readiness for major threats. It's going to be a logistical nightmare. You'll manage, Sarah said with confidence. You built a secret fleet of 500,000 warships. Compared to that, this should be easy. Nothing about this is going to be easy, Zhao replied. But there was acceptance in her voice. But then again, nothing about being human ever has been. 3 weeks later, the Confederation Security Council convened for a historic vote. The chamber was smaller than the main Senate Hall, limited to the 23 species that held permanent council seats and the rotating members that represented regional interests. Today, one seat had been left conspicuously empty, the seat reserved for new members pending approval. Ambassador Chen stood at the respondents' podium once more, but the atmosphere was entirely different from the last time. She'd addressed a Confederation assembly. Then, she'd been the representative of a species facing destruction. Now, she was the ambassador of the power that had just demonstrated it could crush any military force. In the galaxy, the Confederation Chancellor presided over the proceedings with formal ceremony. We gathered to vote on the application of the United Systems of Humanity for permanent membership in the Confederation Security Council. As this body well knows, such membership is reserved for species that meet specific criteria: significant military capacity, demonstrated commitment to Confederation principles, and the ability to contribute meaningfully to galactic security. He paused. I believe we can all agree that recent events have definitively proven humanity meets at least the first criterion. There was a ripple of uncomfortable laughter around the chamber. Even in formal proceedings, the shock of the soul demonstration hadn't entirely faded, however. The Chancellor continued. Before we proceed to the vote, Ambassador Chen has requested an opportunity to address the Council. Ambassador, you have the floor. Sarah stepped forward. She'd prepared the speech carefully, knowing that what she said in the next few minutes would set the tone for humanity's relationship with the Confederation for generations to come. Honorable Chancellor, esteemed members of the Security Council, she began. 3 weeks ago, humanity revealed a truth that has shocked the galactic community. We are not the weak, vulnerable species we appeared to be. We are a military power capable of projecting force on a scale that rivals or exceeds any other single species in the Confederation. This revelation has, understandably, created concern, uncertainty, and in some cases, fear. She paused, making eye contact with various council members. I stand before you today not to apologize for our strength, but to clarify our intentions. Humanity did not build our fleet to conquer. We built it to ensure we would never be conquered. We did not hide our capabilities out of deceit, but out of caution. We are a young species in a galaxy full of ancient civilizations, and we learned early that appearing weak can be just as dangerous as appearing threatening. The Volroxy Counselor, Ambassador Kelver, raised a tentacle. Ambassador Chen, you speak of intentions, but intentions can change. Governments can change. Today, humanity seeks peaceful integration. Tomorrow, who knows? How can the Confederation trust that your massive military force will remain defensive? It was a fair question, and one Sarah had anticipated. You can't, she answered bluntly, and the chamber stirred with surprise. You cannot guarantee the future actions of any species, including my own. What you can do is judge us by our actions, hold us accountable to the same standards you hold yourselves, and maintain the principle that has kept the Confederation stable for millennia: mutual deterrence backed by mutual respect. She activated a holographic display that showed the Humanity Initiative in all its complexity. To that end, I am here to announce the formal launch of the Humanity Initiative, a comprehensive program designed to demonstrate that our capabilities exist to protect and improve the galactic community, not dominate it. As she walked the Council through the various elements of the initiative, the technology sharing, the security guarantees, and finally, the Kelvari Stellar Stabilization Project, she watched the reactions carefully. Skepticism from some quarters, cautious interest from others, and from a few, genuine hope. The Kelvari project alone, the Thornian Counselor observed, would require resources and technology that most species couldn't marshal in a century. You're proposing to undertake this as a gesture of goodwill. Not a gesture, Sarah corrected. A commitment, a demonstration that humanity's advancement benefits the entire galaxy. The Kelvari are dying through no fault of their own, and the Confederation has been unable to help them. We can help, we will help, and will do so openly, with full scientific transparency, so that other species can learn from our methods, and perhaps one day implement similar projects themselves. That's the part I don't understand, the Crithian Counselor said quietly. It was not Ambassador Thelric. He'd been recalled in disgrace after the Sol incident. The new Crithian representative was younger, more cautious, and spoke with the careful tone of someone representing a humbled civilization. Why share this technology? Why not maintain your advantage? Sarah smiled. Because an advantage only matters if you're preparing for conflict. We're preparing for cooperation. A galaxy where every species has the tools to solve their own problems. Is a galaxy where everyone is prosperous, stable, and has no reason to start wars. That's the future humanity wants to help build. The vote, when it came, was indeed unanimous. 23 species formally welcomed humanity to the Security Council, granting them full voting rights and all the responsibilities that came with that position. It was a historic moment, the fastest ascension to the Council in Confederation history. But Sarah knew that the real work was just beginning. As she took her seat at the council table for the first time, occupying the chair that had been empty moments before, she received a private communication on her diplomatic implant. It was from Admiral Zhao, currently overseeing the deployment of the first humanitarian battle groups to their assigned sectors. "Congratulations, Counselor Chen," Zhao's message read. "You got what you wanted. Now comes the hard part, proving we deserve it. First battle group deploys to the Calvari system in 72 hours. Dr. Tanaka says he needs 6 months to set up the stellar engineering equipment. I'm giving him 4. The galaxy is watching. Sarah, let's show them what humanity can really do." Sarah didn't reply immediately. Instead, she looked around the Security Council chamber, at the representatives of species that had existed for thousands of years, that had built civilizations spanning hundreds of star systems, that had forgotten more about galactic politics than humanity had yet learned. And she realized that despite all the military might, despite all the technological advancement, despite the fleet that could shatter worlds, this was the real test of humanity's place in the galaxy. They had proven they could fight. Now they had to prove they could lead. 6 months later, Sarah stood on the observation deck of the USFS Prometheus, a specialized stellar engineering vessel positioned in high orbit around the Calvari homeworld. Around her, representatives from 40 different Confederation species watched as the massive stellar stabilization array, a ring of interconnected platforms larger than most moons, powered up around the dying red sun. Dr. Tanaka had actually beaten Admiral Zhao's aggressive timeline, completing the installation in 3.5 months. The Calvari themselves had been involved in every step of the process, their scientists working alongside human engineers to understand the technology that was about to save their species. It had been an exhausting process, fraught with technical challenges and diplomatic complexities. But now, finally, they were ready. "All stations report ready," Dr. Tanaka announced from the command center. "Energy levels at optimal. Gravitational harmonics synchronized. We are go for stellar stabilization in 60 seconds. The Calvari representative beside Sarah, an elderly female named Shira who served as their planetary leader, was trembling. Not from fear, Sarah realized, but from barely contained emotion. 200 years, Shira whispered. For 200 years, we have watched our sun die. We evacuated our outer colonies. We moved our population to our innermost worlds, knowing even those would eventually become uninhabitable. We begged the Confederation for help, and they sent us sympathy and relocation plans. And now you humans arrive and in 6 months do what we were told was impossible. It's not impossible," Sarah said gently. "It's just difficult and expensive and requires technologies most species haven't developed because they haven't needed to. We needed to, so we did." "Why?" Shira asked, turning to look at Sarah with her large, expressive eyes. "Why did you need to develop this? Your sun is stable. You have billions of years before you would need this technology." Sarah smiled. "Because we're human. We look at problems, and we don't just solve them. We solve them 3 different ways in case the first 2 don't work. We plan for contingencies that might not happen for millennia. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. It's what makes us human." 10 seconds, Dr. Tanaka announced. The observation deck fell silent. 40 species, hundreds of individuals, all holding their collective breath as they watched the display showing the dying sun. Around it, the stabilization array glowed with barely contained power. Human engineering on a scale that defied comprehension, activating stellar stabilization field. Now, the array fired, not with visible beams or dramatic explosions, but with a subtle distortion of spacetime itself. Gravitational lenses bent starlight in impossible patterns. Magnetic fields stronger than anything natural wrapped around the star like invisible hands. And deep within the sun's core, fusion reactions that had been spiraling out of control began to stabilize, to balance, to return to the steady burn that would sustain the Calvari worlds for thousands of years to come. The data came in from hundreds of sensors, each one confirming what the human engineers already knew. It was working. The sun's output was stabilizing. The expansion was reversing. The Calvari system was being saved. Shira collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Around her, other Calvari representatives were embracing, crying, laughing with relief and joy and the overwhelming emotion of a species that had just been pulled back from the brink of extinction. And throughout the observation deck, representatives from dozens of other species were witnessing something unprecedented in modern galactic history. One species using its advanced technology not for conquest or profit, but simply to save another species from extinction. Sarah knelt beside Shira, placing a gentle hand on the Calvari leader's shoulder. "Your sun will burn for another 10,000 years, she said quietly. "Your children will grow up on these worlds. Your civilization will continue. You're safe now. How can we ever repay this?" Shira asked through her tears. "You can't," Sarah said simply. "This isn't a transaction. It's not about payment or debt. This is what the strong do for those who need help. This is what humanity believes in. And this is what we hope the rest of the galaxy will come to understand about us." The news of the Calvari stabilization spread through the Confederation like wildfire. Within days, humanity received formal requests from 17 other species asking for assistance with various crises, environmental disasters, technological problems, security threats. The Humanity Initiative, which had been viewed with skepticism by many, suddenly became the most sought-after program in the galaxy. Back in the Security Council chambers, Sarah presented her report on the Calvari project. The visual evidence was undeniable. The sun was stable. The crisis was averted. 3 billion lives had been saved through human intervention. "This is unprecedented," the Chancellor stated, his crystalline form refracting the light in patterns that indicated profound respect. "In all my centuries of service to the Confederation, I have never witnessed such a dramatic demonstration of technological capability. Married to humanitarian purpose, it's only the beginning," Sarah replied. "We have teams preparing to respond to the other requests we've received. We're expanding the initiative to include educational programs so other species can eventually implement similar technologies. And we're working with the Confederation's scientific community to identify other critical situations where human technology can make a difference." The Thornian counselor leaned forward. "Ambassador Chen, the Thornian Collective would like to formally propose a treaty of cooperation with the United Systems. We recognize that humanity has emerged as a stabilizing force in the galaxy, and we would consider it an honor to work alongside you in addressing regional security concerns." It was a significant moment. The Thornian Collective was one of the oldest and most respected civilizations in the Confederation. Their offer of cooperation was not just diplomatic courtesy. It was a genuine acknowledgement that humanity had earned their respect. "The United Systems would be honored," Sarah replied formally. "We look forward to building a strong partnership with the Collective." Over the next hour, 5 more species made similar proposals. Trade agreements, technology exchanges, security partnerships, cultural programs. Humanity, which just months before had been dismissed as a minor species barely worthy of attention, was now being courted by the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. But the most significant moment came at the end of the session, when the Crithian counselor requested permission to speak. "Ambassador Chen," he began, his voice carrying the weight of his species' recent humiliation. "The Crithian Dominion wishes to make a formal apology to humanity. Our actions were born of arrogance and ignorance. We believed might made right, and we learned that even overwhelming might is meaningless against those who are prepared. But more importantly, we have learned from watching your Calvari project that true strength is not measured in warships, but in the willingness to use one's capabilities for the benefit of others." He paused, and Sarah could see the difficulty this admission caused him. The Crithians were a proud species, and this level of public contrition was virtually unprecedented in their culture. The Dominion has begun a comprehensive review of our military doctrine and our relationships with our client species. We recognize that we have much to learn from humanity's approach, and we hope that, in time, we might earn the opportunity to learn from you directly, perhaps even to work alongside you in protecting the galaxy we all share." Sarah stood and inclined her head respectfully. "The United Systems accepts your apology, and we welcome your commitment to change. The past cannot be undone, but the future remains unwritten. We would be honored to work with a reformed Crithian Dominion toward building a better and more just galactic community." It was a diplomatic answer, carefully crafted to acknowledge the apology without forgetting the threat the Dominion had posed. But it was also genuine. Humanity had not built their fleet to hold grudges or to maintain eternal enmity. They had built it to ensure that species like the Crithians would think twice before threatening others. If that threat had been neutralized through deterrence and subsequent reformation, then the fleet had served its purpose. That evening, Sarah returned to her quarters aboard the human diplomatic station, orbiting the Confederation capital. She was exhausted, emotionally and physically drained by months of intensive diplomatic work. But as she settled into her chair and looked out at the stars, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment that her communication console chimed. Admiral Zhao's face appeared on the screen, and for the first time since Sarah had known her, the Admiral was actually smiling. "Congratulations, Sarah," Zhao said warmly. "I've been reviewing the reports from the Council session. You did it. You actually did it. You took the most powerful military force in the galaxy and turned it into a source of hope. Instead of fear, we did it," Sarah corrected. "None of this would have been possible without the fleet you built, the capabilities you developed, the deterrence you provide. The Humanity Initiative only works because everyone knows that behind the humanitarian aid and the stellar engineering projects, there's 500,000 warships ready to defend what we've built. Speak softly and carry a big stick," Zhao quoted with a knowing smile. "Teddy Roosevelt would be proud. I think he'd be amazed," Sarah replied. "We took his philosophy and applied it on a galactic scale. Now we just have to maintain it. Keep the stick big enough that no one tests us, but speak softly enough that no one fears us." "It's going to be a long road," Zhao observed. "We're going to make mistakes. There will be crises we can't solve, threats we have to respond to with force, species that resent our power no matter how carefully we wield it. This isn't a happily ever after ending, Sarah. It's the beginning of something complicated and difficult." "I know," Sarah said. "But it's also the beginning of something better. For the first time in Confederation history, there's a power that prioritizes protection over domination, that uses its strength to lift others up instead of keeping them down, that believes the strong have a responsibility to the weak, not an opportunity to exploit them. That's worth the complications. That's worth the difficulties." Zhao nodded slowly. "Then I suppose we'd better get used to being the galaxy's protector." God knows they need one. The communication ended, and Sarah sat alone with her thoughts. Outside, the stars shone with the light of 1,000,000,000 worlds, each one home to its own species, its own civilization, its own dreams and fears and hopes for the future. And somewhere out there, in the vast darkness between stars, humanity's fleet maintained its silent vigil, ready to respond to any threat, any crisis, any call for help. They had come to the galaxy as explorers, cautious and careful. They had been dismissed as weak, patronized as children, and finally threatened with extinction. And in response, they had revealed a strength that shocked the galaxy to its core. But more importantly, they had shown that strength could be paired with compassion, that power could be married to responsibility, that the capacity for destruction could be wielded in the service of creation. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage not as conquerors, but as protectors, not as a threat, but as a shield. And the galaxy, slowly but surely, was beginning to understand what that meant. In the depths of human space, in secret shipyards hidden among the asteroids of the Kuiper Belt, work continued on the next generation of vessels, faster, stronger, more capable than anything the galaxy had yet seen, because humanity had learned the fundamental lesson that ensured survival in a dangerous universe. Hope for peace, but prepare for war. Speak softly, but carry a stick so big that no one would ever dare to test it. And if someone was foolish enough to try, they would learn what the Crithian Dominion had learned at Sol. Humanity does not break. Humanity shatters you. The Battle of Sol, as it became known in galactic history, marked the end of humanity's hidden development and the beginning of their role as one of the galaxy's great powers. But more than that, it marked a fundamental shift in how power was wielded in the Confederation. For the first time in millennia, the strongest military force in the galaxy belonged to a species that valued mercy as much as might, and the galaxy would never be the same.